The Cold War was the war that never turned hot, but it came dangerously close. For nearly half a century, the world balanced on the edge of nuclear destruction, with just one mistake enough to wipe out humanity. Today, we're counting down the top 10 Cold War events that nearly started World War III. Number 10, the Berlin Blockade, 1948. Only 3 years after World War II ended, tensions between East and West were already boiling. The Soviet Union attempted to strangle West Berlin by cutting off all food, fuel, and supplies, hoping to force the Allies to abandon the city. In response, the Allies launched the Berlin Airlift, flying in thousands of tons of supplies daily for almost a year. Planes landed every few minutes, braving bad weather and Soviet interference. The standoff could have easily spiraled into full-scale war, yet it ended without a single shot being fired, an early lesson in Cold War brinkmanship. Number 9. The Korean War, 1950-1953. The first major proxy war of the Cold War erupted when North Korea, backed by the Soviets and China, invaded South Korea. The United States and United Nations forces pushed back, fighting in brutal conditions and bitter winters. The conflict saw massive civilian casualties and introduced the terrifying idea that a regional war could escalate into a global nuclear conflict. Each side feared crossing a line that could provoke the Soviet Union or the US into a nuclear showdown. Number 8. The U-2 spy plane incident, 1960. When an American U-2 reconnaissance plane was shot down over Soviet airspace, the world watched in shock. The pilot, Francis Gary Powers, was captured alive, exposing the secretive U.S. surveillance program. Diplomacy crumbled as President Eisenhower and Premier Khrushchev exchanged angry threats, and a major summit was derailed. This single espionage mission nearly triggered an escalation that could have turned a tense standoff into open war. Number 7. The Berlin Wall Crisis, 1961. As East Germans flooded to the West, the Soviets abruptly built the Berlin Wall, cutting families and friends in half overnight. At checkpoint, Charlie, U.S. and Soviet tanks faced each other, guns loaded, mere meters apart. For 16 hours, the world held its breath. A single spark, a misfired shot, or rash decision could have ignited nuclear conflict. Ultimately, diplomacy and restraint prevailed, but the crisis highlighted how quickly Cold War tensions could escalate into catastrophe. Number 6. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. The closest the world ever came to nuclear Armageddon. The Soviet Union secretly installed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida. For 13 days, the United States and the USSR teetered on the brink. Secret negotiations, naval blockades, and high-stakes diplomacy eventually diffused the situation, but any misstep, a radar misreading, a miscommunication, could have launched a nuclear strike that might have destroyed entire continents. The crisis forever changed the way nations handled nuclear diplomacy. Number 5. The Vietnam War, 1955-1975. Though the US and Soviet Union never fought directly, Vietnam was a flashpoint of Cold War tension. The U.S. sought to contain communism, while the Soviets and Chinese armed North Vietnam. Guerrilla warfare, chemical weapons, and a backdrop of global nuclear threats made every escalation terrifying. While the conflict remained regional, leaders knew that misjudgments could pull the superpowers into full-scale nuclear war, keeping the world on edge for decades. Number 4. The Yom Kippur War and Nuclear Alert, 1973. In October 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. The Soviets threatened to intervene on behalf of their allies, prompting the U.S. to raise its nuclear alert to DEFCON 3. For a brief, tense period, the Middle East was a tinderbox that could have drawn both superpowers into direct confrontation. Cooler heads and back-channel diplomacy eventually prevented a nuclear showdown, but the moment reminded the world how fragile peace was during the Cold War. Number 3. The Able Archer Scare, 1983. During a NATO exercise called Able Archer, Western forces simulated a nuclear attack. Soviet intelligence mistakenly believed it was a real launch. Soviet forces went on high alert, preparing nuclear weapons for a potential strike. For several days, the world hovered on the edge of nuclear disaster. A single misinterpreted signal could have ended human civilization. The scare underscored how paranoia, rather than actual conflict, was often the greatest threat of the Cold War. Number 2. The Soviet Submarine Incident, 1962. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine armed with nuclear torpedoes was cornered by U.S. warships. The captain wanted to launch a nuclear attack, but one man, Vasily Arkhipov, refused to authorize it. His calm, rational decision may have literally saved the world. Without his intervention, a submarine launch could have provoked full-scale nuclear war between the superpowers, showing how individual courage sometimes matters more than armies. Number 1. The fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. The Cold War didn't end with a bang, but with a wall coming down. The Berlin Wall, a symbol of decades-long tension and division, was torn apart by people eager for freedom. It marked the end of the Cold War era, not with missiles, but with hope. The world had survived nearly half a century on the edge of nuclear annihilation, and peace had won. The Cold War was a silent war of nerves, where a miscommunication or a single wrong move could have ended civilization. Which Cold War moment do you think was the closest to World War III? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you learned something new, and subscribe for more history that shaped the world.